Folks, here's the truth. Most men never hear. One sentence can follow her into bed long after you're gone. You've been there. You say something nice, she smiles, and by the next morning, you're forgotten. You think compliments are supposed to work, but they don't. Not because you said the wrong thing, but because you spoke from the wrong place. Most men compliment to be liked. That kills desire. What actually keeps a woman awake isn't praise. It's the feeling that someone saw something in her that no one else named out loud. Especially for mature women, attraction doesn't start in the body. It starts in the mind, then spreads. Here's the uncomfortable part. The compliments you've been taught to use make you sound safe, predictable, and easy to dismiss. They calm her ego, but they don't stir her imagination. And imagination is where fantasy lives. In this video, I'm going to show you a different approach. Not lines, not tricks. 3 precise ways of speaking that create tension, curiosity, and quiet obsession. The kind that makes her replay your words when the room is dark and silent. This is about masculine clarity, emotional control, and words that linger overnight afterward. I'm not here to comfort you. I'm here to wake you up. If you want to stop being polite and start being memorable, pay attention. Let's get into it. Number 1. Why her mind gets turned on. Folks, if you still think attraction starts with the body, you are already behind. A woman's desire is switched on in her mind first. The body follows later, if at all. This is where most men lose without ever realizing it. Let's be honest. Most compliments men give are aimed at being approved of. You say something nice, you wait for a smile, and you hope that smile means progress. But approval is passive. Desire is active. And her mind only gets turned on when she feels stimulated, not flattered. A woman's mind reacts to perception, to being noticed in a way that feels rare. When you say what everyone else says, her brain categorizes you as familiar and safe. Safe is fine, but familiar shuts down fantasy. Here's a real situation. Tom is 54, living in Chicago. He's been seeing Karen, who is 49. At dinner, Tom tells her she looks beautiful. She smiles and thanks him. The moment ends there. Later that night, nothing about that comment stays with her. A week later, something changes. Instead of commenting on her looks, Tom says calmly, "There's something sharp about the way you observe people. Most men would miss it." Then he goes quiet. No follow-up. No smile fishing. Karen doesn't respond right away, but later that evening she keeps replaying that sentence. Why? Because it made her think. It touched her identity, not her appearance. This is how her mind gets turned on, through recognition that feels specific and controlled. Another example. Michael is 58, divorced, living in Phoenix. He's talking with Laura, 51. Instead of praising her confidence, he says, "You're more composed than you let on." Then he changes the subject. Laura doesn't ask what he meant, but she thinks about it for hours. That thought process is desire forming. The mind gets turned on when it senses depth, when it senses that you are not trying to get something from her, when your words sound like observations, not bids for validation. This is where Stoicism matters. A Stoic man speaks without attachment to outcome. He says what he sees and releases it. That emotional independence is felt instantly. When you don't need her reaction, her mind leans in to figure you out. Men often talk too much after a compliment. They explain, they soften it, they add reassurance. That kills the effect. The mind needs space to work. Silence after a statement is what lets imagination take over. Another mistake men make is trying to be sexual too early. Sexual language before mental engagement feels crude. Mental engagement before sexuality feels dangerous in the right way. And danger, when controlled, is exciting. A mature woman especially responds to this because she has heard it all before. She doesn't want noise, she wants precision. One calm sentence that lands cleanly will do more than 10 compliments stacked together. Here's the key takeaway. If her mind is engaged, her body will follow at its own pace. If her mind is bored, nothing else matters. If you've ever noticed a woman grow quieter after something you said that wasn't disinterest, that was her mind switching on. If this hits home, drop this in the comments. I speak precisely. Stay with me. What comes next breaks down the kind of compliments that actually create desire instead of killing it. Number 2. Compliments that create desire. Folks, this is where most men get it completely wrong. They think desire is created by saying something nice. It's not. Desire is created by saying something true calmly, without asking for anything back. That difference changes everything. Let's be clear. Compliments that create desire are not about boosting her mood. They are about activating her imagination. Praise makes her feel good for a moment. Perception makes her feel seen. And being seen is what turns her on. Most men compliment from below. They look up at her and speak. That energy feels submissive even when the words sound confident. Desire does not respond to that. Desire responds when a man speaks from level ground or slightly above emotionally. Here's the rule. A compliment that creates desire is never a request. It's a statement. No question mark, no follow-up, no checking her reaction. You say it and you let it land. Stoicism explains why this works. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that power comes from acting without attachment to outcome. When you speak without needing her response, your words carry weight. When you need her reaction, your words feel empty. Compliments that create desire focus on character, energy, and restraint, not appearance. Appearance is obvious. Everyone comments on it. Obvious things don't linger in the mind. Subtle things do. Another Stoic insight matters here. Epictetus taught that if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish or silent. Silence after a compliment is not awkward. It's powerful. Silence gives her mind space to fill in the meaning, and whatever she fills in is usually more intimate than anything you could say next. Men often ruin compliments by explaining them. They say something interesting, then soften it, clarify it, or justify it. That tells her you're unsure. Uncertainty drains desire instantly. Compliments that work are also emotionally contained. You don't lean in. You don't smile nervously. You don't wait. Your body language says, "I noticed something." That's all. That restraint creates tension. Seneca warned that excess weakens impact. The same is true with words. One sentence delivered cleanly beats a paragraph every time. When you talk too much, you turn mystery into noise. Another critical distinction. Compliments that create desire are not sexual on the surface. They are suggestive without being explicit. Explicit language engages logic. Suggestive language engages imagination. Desire lives in imagination. This is why many women will say they felt something without knowing why. Their mind is working on the meaning of what you said. When a compliment makes her think instead of react, you've done it right. A Stoic man understands timing. He does not compliment when he feels nervous. He compliments when the moment is calm. Calm moments amplify impact. Emotional spikes distort it. And here's the hardest truth. If you need compliments to move things forward, you're already chasing. Compliments that create desire don't push, they pull quietly. When spoken correctly, a compliment doesn't end the moment. It echoes after the moment is over. That echo is what follows her into the night. If this makes sense to you, type this in the comments. I speak with intent. Stay with me. The next part breaks down why complimenting her body actually works against you and what to say instead if you want her imagination to do the work for you. Number 3. Never compliment her body. Folks, this one will trigger a lot of men, but it needs to be said clearly. Complimenting her body is the fastest way to shut down her imagination. It feels obvious, predictable, and replaceable. And replaceable is the opposite of desire. Let's be real for a moment. She already knows how she looks. She has heard it from strangers, exes, co-workers, and men trying too hard. When you focus on her body, you place yourself in the same mental category as everyone else. Her mind stops leaning forward. Desire grows when a woman feels unique in your perception, not admired in a generic way. The body is public information. Her inner world is not. Here's a real example. Brian is 56, living in Denver. He meets Lisa, 48, through mutual friends. On their second date, Brian tells her she has an incredible figure. Lisa smiles politely. The energy drops. Conversation continues, but something subtle closes. Later, Lisa tells a friend she felt complimented but unseen. Now, contrast that with another moment. Mark is 59, living in Raleigh. He's spending time with Angela, 52. Instead of commenting on her appearance, he says calmly, "You carry yourself like you're used to handling pressure." Then he moves on. Angela doesn't respond right away, but later she admits that sentence stayed with her all night. Why? Because it spoke to identity, not flesh. When you compliment the body, you activate comparison. When you compliment perception, you activate intimacy. Another situation makes this clearer. David is 61, divorced, living in Oregon. He's dating Michelle, 55. Michelle is attractive and knows it. David never comments on her looks. Instead, he notices her restraint. He says, "You don't rush people. That tells me a lot." Michelle later leans in emotionally because she feels understood, not appraised. Men often think avoiding body compliments makes them seem uninterested. That fear comes from insecurity. Interest is shown through attention, presence, and timing, not verbal praise of physical traits. Stoic thinking aligns perfectly here. The Stoics valued substance over surface. Marcus Aurelius warned against being impressed by what dazzles the eyes but leaves the soul untouched. A man who focuses on depth communicates discipline. Discipline is attractive. Complimenting her body also creates pressure. It subtly demands a response, a smile, gratitude, reassurance. That demand shifts the power dynamic. Desire doesn't grow under obligation. When you avoid body compliments, something interesting happens. She begins to wonder what you see. That wondering activates fantasy. Fantasy lives in the unknown, not in the obvious. This is especially important with mature women. They are tired of being reduced to appearance. When you bypass that and speak to character, presence, or emotional intelligence, you stand out immediately. Another mistake men make is trying to balance body compliments with deeper ones. That still anchors you in the same frame. If you want her mind engaged, skip the body entirely. Here's the key principle. Compliments that linger never describe what anyone can see. They describe what few can articulate. If this hit home, write this in the comments: "I see deeper." Don't skip what comes next. This next shift explains how dangerous words create desire without sounding sexual at all. Number 4. Words that feel dangerous. Folks, when I say dangerous, I'm not talking about vulgar, aggressive, or explicit language. I'm talking about words that bypass her defenses and land directly in her imagination. Dangerous words feel risky because they reveal perception, not desire. And perception is far more intimate than intention. Let's be honest, most men play it safe with words because they're afraid of being misunderstood. They soften everything. They explain too much. They hide behind politeness. That safety might protect your ego, but it never creates desire. Desire needs a hint of risk, controlled and intentional. Words feel dangerous when they suggest something without asking permission to be felt. They don't describe her body. They describe her presence. They don't flatter. They observe. And they're delivered calmly, without emotional urgency. Here's the key shift. Dangerous words are not emotional. They are precise. They sound grounded, not excited. When a man sounds excited, she feels chased. When he sounds calm, she feels seen. Stoicism explains why this works. Marcus Aurelius wrote that restraint is the highest form of power. A man who restrains his emotions while speaking signals inner command. That command makes his words feel heavier. He doesn't need many. One sentence is enough. Dangerous words also leave space afterward. You don't stack them. You don't follow them with reassurance. You let silence do the work. Silence is what turns a statement into a thought loop. And thought loops are where fantasy begins. Another Stoic principle applies here. Epictetus taught that we should speak only what is necessary and true. When you speak less, each word carries more weight. When you speak carefully, your words feel intentional. Intentional words feel dangerous because they imply awareness. Most men avoid these kinds of words because they fear the pause that follows. That pause feels exposed. But exposure is exactly what makes the moment electric. If you can sit comfortably in that silence, her mind fills it for you. Dangerous words also do something else. They shift polarity. Instead of you trying to impress her, she starts trying to understand you. That subtle reversal changes the dynamic completely. She leans in mentally not because you pulled her, but because you stopped chasing. Seneca warned that excess weakens impact. This applies perfectly here. Too many compliments numb the moment. One well-placed observation sharpens it. Sharpness is what makes words linger. Another reason these words work is because they don't seek validation. You're not checking her reaction. You're not waiting for approval. You say it because it's true to you. That independence is felt immediately. Independence is attractive. This is especially powerful with mature women. They have experienced loud men, dramatic men, and men who overshare. What stands out now is restraint, calm confidence, words that don't rush toward an outcome. Here's the deeper truth. Words feel dangerous when they reveal that you are not afraid of depth. You're not afraid of silence. You're not afraid of tension. That fearlessness communicates masculine stability without saying a word about it. If this way of thinking is hitting differently and you want more guidance like this, consider joining the channel membership. That's where I go deeper into masculine communication, emotional control, and real-world application without watering it down. If this resonated, drop this in the comments. I speak with restraint. Hold this thought because the next part explains how making her feel truly seen is what turns curiosity into craving. Number 5. Make her crave your voice. Folks, if you think it's the words alone that create desire, you're missing the real lever. It's not just what you say, it's how your voice lands in her body. A calm, grounded voice can stay with her longer than any sentence ever will. Let's be honest, most men talk too fast when they feel attraction. Their voice rises, their pacing speeds up. They try to fill space. That energy signals eagerness, not confidence. And eagerness rarely creates craving. A woman craves a man's voice when it feels steady, measured, unrushed, when your voice sounds like it doesn't need anything from her. That tone alone communicates safety and control, and those two things open the door to desire. Here's a real situation. Paul is 57, living in Boston. He's been seeing Denise, 51. Paul doesn't say much on dates, but when he does, his voice is slow and calm. One night he leans slightly closer and says quietly, "You're more intense than you pretend to be." Then he stops talking. Denise doesn't respond right away. Later she tells him she kept replaying his voice in her head while trying to sleep. Not the sentence, the voice. Now compare that to another example. Kevin is 53, living in Tampa. He's confident on paper, but when he compliments, his tone lifts at the end like he's asking permission. Even when his words are good, his voice gives him away. The woman listens politely, but nothing sticks. There's no craving because there's no grounding. Your voice becomes craveable when it slows the moment down instead of pushing it forward. Silence before you speak matters. Silence after you speak matters even more. Those pauses frame your words like punctuation. Without them, everything blurs together. Another example. James is 60, recently divorced, living in Arizona. He's talking with Natalie, 54. During a quiet conversation, James lowers his voice slightly and says, "You don't open up unless you trust someone." Then he looks away and sips his drink. Natalie feels a pull she can't explain. That pull isn't from the compliment. It's from the restraint in how it was delivered. Men often ruin this by trying to sound smooth. Smooth sounds practiced. Practiced sounds safe. Safe doesn't linger. What lingers is authenticity paired with control. A steady voice also signals emotional regulation. It tells her you're not carried away by the moment. You're choosing your words, not spilling them. That choice makes her feel held without being trapped. This is especially powerful with mature women. They've heard loud confidence. They've heard rehearsed charm. What stands out now is calm authority, a voice that doesn't rush to impress. Here's the key. If your voice stays grounded, her nervous system relaxes. When her nervous system relaxes, imagination turns on. That's when craving begins. You don't need to talk more. You need to talk less, slower, and with intention. Let the weight of your voice do the work. If this resonates with you, drop this in the comments. I speak slowly. Hold on to this idea. The next shift explains why desire actually starts long before the compliment itself is ever spoken. Number 6. Desire starts in her head. Folks, this is where everything finally clicks if you've been paying attention. Desire does not begin with touch. It does not begin with looks. It does not even begin with words. Desire begins in her head long before anything physical ever happens. Let's be clear. A woman doesn't fantasize because of what you do. She fantasizes because of how you make her think. Her mind has to feel activated, safe, and slightly unsettled at the same time. When that happens, her imagination takes over without you needing to push anything forward. Most men get this backwards. They try to trigger desire through action. More compliments, more flirting, more effort. But effort without mental engagement feels noisy. It overwhelms instead of attracts. Here's the truth. When her mind is engaged, her body follows naturally. When her mind is bored, nothing else matters. Stoicism explains this perfectly. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind is what shapes our experience, not the external event itself. The same applies here. What she feels about you is shaped by how her mind interprets your presence, not by how hard you try. Desire starts in her head when she senses emotional leadership. That means you are calm while the moment has potential. You are not rushing toward an outcome. You are not trying to extract a reaction. You are simply grounded in yourself. This mental grounding does something powerful. It removes pressure, and pressure is the enemy of fantasy. Fantasy needs space. When nothing is demanded of her, her mind is free to wander. And when it wanders, it often wanders toward desire. Another Stoic insight matters here. Epictetus taught that if you want freedom, stop depending on things outside your control. When you stop needing her response to feel confident, your energy changes. Your words slow down. Your silences feel intentional. That independence is felt immediately, and it's deeply attractive. Desire also begins in her head when your words create questions, not answers. Statements that don't fully explain themselves linger. They create mental loops. And mental loops replay at night. Men often kill this by over-clarifying. They say something intriguing, then rush to soften it, explain it, or justify it. That closes the loop. Closed loops don't replay. Another reason desire starts mentally is because imagination is safer than action, especially for mature women. The mind can explore desire without risk. When you respect that process, instead of forcing speed, desire deepens instead of shutting down. Seneca warned that impatience reveals weakness. Impatience in attraction feels like hunger. Hunger makes the mind defensive. Calm confidence makes the mind curious. Curiosity is the doorway to fantasy. Here's the uncomfortable part. If you need visible signs of attraction to feel secure, you will always interrupt the mental process. Desire doesn't announce itself at first. It simmers. It builds quietly. Men who understand this don't rush the moment. They allow it. And here's the real payoff. When desire starts in her head, it lasts longer. It doesn't burn out quickly. It doesn't need constant stimulation. It grows on its own. This is why a single calm sentence can be more powerful than an entire night of flirting. One engages the mind, the other just fills time. If you understand this, you stop trying to turn her on. You focus on staying centered, and her mind does the rest. If this makes sense to you, write this in the comments. I lead mentally. Before you assume this is all about what you say, pause. The next part explains why silence is often more powerful than any compliment you could ever give. Number 7. Compliments she fantasizes about. Folks, the compliments she fantasizes about are never loud, never obvious, and never about her body. They're the ones that slip past her defenses and settle into her thoughts when everything gets quiet. These compliments don't ask for a reaction. They create a feeling she keeps returning to. Let's be straight. A compliment becomes fantasy fuel when it feels personal, controlled, and slightly unresolved. It hints at depth without spelling it out. It makes her wonder what you see and why you're not trying to convince her of anything. Here's a real situation. Andrew is 58, living in Portland. He's been seeing Melissa, 52. During a relaxed conversation, Andrew says calmly, "You choose your words carefully. That tells me you don't trust easily." Then he pauses and changes the subject. Melissa doesn't respond in the moment. Later that night, she keeps replaying that line. Not because it flattered her, but because it felt accurate. Accuracy feels intimate. Intimacy feeds fantasy. Another example. Robert is 60, living in New Jersey. He's talking with Claire, 55. Instead of complimenting her confidence, he says, "You're more observant than you let people realize." No smile, no follow-up. Claire later admits that sentence stayed with her because it made her feel quietly exposed in a good way. Exposure without pressure is powerful. Compliments she fantasizes about often focus on restraint, awareness, or emotional intelligence. They suggest that you're paying attention to who she is when she's not performing. That kind of attention feels rare. Men usually miss this because they think compliments should be positive and uplifting. But fantasy doesn't come from positivity. It comes from recognition. Being recognized without being chased makes her feel chosen, not pursued. Here's another situation. Stephen is 56, divorced, living in Colorado. He tells Dana, 51, "You don't open up unless you feel in control." Then he lets silence sit. Dana doesn't ask what he meant. She doesn't need to. Her mind takes over. That's the point. Notice the pattern. These compliments are not long. They are not sweet. They are not followed by reassurance. They are delivered calmly and left alone. That ending is what gives them power. Men often ruin fantasy by over-explaining. They feel the need to clarify their intention so they won't be misunderstood. But fantasy lives in what's left unsaid. When you explain too much, you turn imagination into logic. Logic doesn't replay at night. Compliments that trigger fantasy also don't come frequently. When every interaction includes praise, nothing stands out. Scarcity creates weight. One well-placed sentence can outweigh weeks of talking. This matters even more with mature women. They are tired of exaggerated admiration. What gets their attention now is precision. A man who notices subtlety signals emotional maturity. Emotional maturity feels safe enough to explore desire mentally. Here's the core principle. A compliment becomes fantasy when it feels like a window into how you see the world, not a strategy to get closer to her. If you've ever had a woman grow quieter after something you said that wasn't confusion, that was her mind working. If this resonates, write this in the comments. I speak deliberately. Keep this in mind, because the next shift explains why silence after a compliment often matters more than the compliment itself. Number 8. Silence makes it sexual. Folks, this is one of the most misunderstood dynamics in attraction. Men think sexuality comes from adding more words, more compliments, more explanation. In reality, sexuality often appears when you remove something. Silence is what gives desire room to breathe. Let's be real. Talking feels safe. Silence feels risky. That's why most men rush to fill it. But the moment you rush, you collapse tension. When you stay silent after a meaningful statement, you allow her mind to step forward on its own. That step is where sexuality begins. Silence works because it shifts the labor. Instead of you entertaining her, her mind starts engaging you. She starts replaying what you said. She starts wondering what you meant. And wondering is far more intimate than listening. This is where Stoicism offers clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote that it is better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak and remove all doubt. In attraction, silence doesn't signal weakness. It signals restraint. And restraint feels powerful. Most men talk after a compliment because they want reassurance. A smile, a laugh, confirmation that they didn't mess up. That neediness leaks through the voice, even when the words sound confident. Silence, on the other hand, communicates self-command. You said what you meant. You don't need anything back. Silence also creates contrast. When conversation has rhythm and then suddenly pauses, the nervous system notices. That pause becomes charged. Not awkward, charged. Especially when it follows a calm, precise observation. Another Stoic idea fits perfectly here. Epictetus taught that freedom comes from not being dependent on things outside your control. When you don't need her reaction to feel steady, you stop managing the moment. That lack of management is felt immediately. It relaxes her and heightens attention at the same time. Here's an important distinction. Silence is not withdrawal. It's not sulking. It's not pulling away emotionally. Silence is presence without noise. You stay grounded. Your body language stays open. Your attention doesn't disappear. Only the words stop. Men often ruin this by apologizing for the silence. They laugh. They add a joke. They break the moment because they're uncomfortable holding it. But discomfort is not danger. Discomfort is where growth and desire both live. Seneca warned that excess dulls impact. Words are no different. When every moment is filled, nothing stands out. Silence frames what came before it. It makes the statement feel heavier, more intentional, more personal. Silence also invites imagination. When nothing new is being added, the mind creates meaning on its own. And what the mind creates privately is always more intimate than anything spoken aloud. That's why silence can feel sexual without being explicit at all. This matters even more with mature women. They've heard endless chatter. They've seen men talk themselves out of attraction. What stands out now is a man who can pause without anxiety. A man who trusts the moment enough not to rush it. Here's the key takeaway. Silence is not the absence of confidence. It is confidence expressed without words. When you understand this, you stop trying to be impressive and start being felt. If this clicks for you, write this in the comments. I hold silence. Before you assume words are the main tool, pause right here. The next part explains why certain phrases replay in her mind long after the conversation ends. Number 9. Why she replays your words. Folks, when a woman replays your words, it's not because you said something clever. It's because what you said landed unfinished. Her mind picked it up and kept working on it after you were gone. That's not an accident. That's psychology. Let's be real. The mind replays what feels unresolved, what feels precise but not fully explained, what hints at meaning without spelling it out. Most men talk in complete loops. They explain everything. Complete loops don't replay. Open loops do. Here's a real example. Jason is 55, living in Minneapolis. He's seeing Erin, 49. During a quiet conversation, Jason says calmly, "You don't react emotionally unless something really matters to you." Then he changes the subject and asks about her week. Erin nods, but later that night she keeps thinking about that sentence. Why? Because it felt accurate and incomplete. It made her reflect. Reflection is intimacy. Compare that with another situation. Ryan is 58, living in Austin. He tells a woman, "You're amazing and really easy to talk to." She smiles and thanks him. The moment ends. Nothing replays. Why? Because there's nothing for the mind to hold on to. It's pleasant but finished. Words replay when they touch identity, not ego. Identity. When you speak to how she experiences the world, her mind checks the statement against her inner reality. That checking process creates a loop. Loops replay. Another example makes this clear. Thomas is 61, divorced, living in Virginia. He's spending time with Laura, 54. During a pause, he says, "You keep control by staying quiet when others talk too much." Then he looks away and takes a sip of his drink. Laura doesn't ask what he meant. Later, lying in bed, that sentence keeps returning. It felt like someone noticed a private pattern. Men often think replay comes from intensity. It doesn't. It comes from precision. Precision feels personal. Personal feels intimate. Replay also happens when your words are delivered without need. If your tone asks for validation, the mind focuses on your insecurity instead of the message. If your tone is calm and grounded, the message stands alone. Standalone messages echo. Here's the mistake most men make. They follow a strong statement with reassurance. They explain, they soften, they joke. That closes the loop. When you close the loop, the mind stops working. A mature woman especially replays words that feel emotionally intelligent. She's heard compliments her whole life. What stands out now is insight. Insight signals awareness. Awareness signals depth. Depth is attractive. Another real scenario. Paul is 59, living in Seattle. He tells Monica, 53, "You don't open up until you trust someone's consistency." Then he lets silence sit. Monica later admits that line stayed with her because it felt true and slightly exposing. Exposure without pressure is unforgettable. Replay is also tied to restraint. When you could say more but choose not to, the mind fills the gap, and what the mind creates privately feels more intimate than anything spoken aloud. This is why one sentence can follow her into the night, not because it was seductive, because it was accurate and unfinished. If you want your words to replay, stop trying to impress. Start observing. Say less. Leave space. If this hits home, write this in the comments: I leave space. Stay right here. The final part explains why most men never experience this at all and how they talk themselves out of attraction without realizing it. Number 10. Men say it wrong. Folks, this is where everything comes together, and it's also where most men fail without ever realizing it. Men don't lose attraction because they lack confidence or intelligence. They lose it because they say the right things from the wrong place. Let's be blunt. Most men speak to get something. Approval, reassurance, validation. Even when the words sound calm, the intention underneath them is loud. Women feel that immediately. And once your words feel like a request, desire starts pulling back. Men say it wrong because they talk from insecurity disguised as politeness. They soften their statements. They add explanations. They follow a strong observation with a smile or a joke to make sure it lands safely. Safety for your ego, not for her imagination. Here's the truth you need to hear. Attraction does not respond to effort. It responds to self-possession. When a man is grounded in himself, his words don't need decoration. They stand on their own. When he's unsure, he keeps talking. Another mistake men make is speaking too soon. They rush to express interest before tension has time to form. They reveal desire before curiosity has a chance to grow. That impatience kills the very thing they're trying to create. Stoicism warned against this long ago. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that the disciplined mind acts at the right time, not the earliest moment. When you speak before the moment is ready, your words feel premature. Premature words feel weak. Men also say it wrong because they try to be impressive instead of accurate. They exaggerate. They praise broadly. They say what they think sounds attractive. But attraction doesn't come from sounding good. It comes from seeing clearly. Accuracy feels intimate. Exaggeration feels performative. Women fantasize about intimacy, not performance. Another common error is talking to fill space. Silence makes men uncomfortable because it exposes their internal state. If you're not comfortable with silence, you'll sabotage it. And when you sabotage silence, you destroy tension. Epictetus taught that a man is disturbed not by events, but by his judgments about them. Silence is only awkward if you judge it that way. When you stop judging it, silence becomes a tool instead of a threat. Men also say it wrong by oversharing. They reveal too much too fast, trying to create closeness. But closeness without mystery feels flat. Mystery without pressure feels magnetic. This is especially true with mature women. They don't want to be overwhelmed. They want to feel understood without being consumed. A man who knows when to stop speaking signals emotional maturity. Emotional maturity creates safety. Safety allows desire to stay alive. Here's the final piece. Men say it wrong because they think words are the source of attraction. They're not. Words are just signals. Your internal state is the source. If you're calm, your words feel calm. If you're centered, your words feel grounded. If you're needy, your words betray you no matter how polished they sound. That's why no script ever works long term. Scripts don't change who you are. Presence does. I'm not here to teach you lines. I'm here to wake you up. Speak less. Observe more. Say what you see without attachment to outcome. Let silence do its work. When you stop trying to make something happen, that's when things finally start happening. Folks, today we broke down why words matter more than looks, volume, or effort. You learned how desire starts in her mind, why most compliments fail, and how calm, precise language creates imagination, tension, and memory. This wasn't about lines. It was about presence, restraint, and speaking from control instead of need. If this way of thinking speaks to you and you want to go deeper, consider joining the channel membership. That's where I share more direct guidance for men who want clarity, self-mastery, and real results without the noise. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's coming next. Thanks for watching. I appreciate your time, and I'll see you again tomorrow.